For someone behind bars, phone calls at home are virtually the only way to contact the outside world. But those calls to family and friends are costing a pretty penny in state prisons. This graph puts it into perspective. A basic plan from Cricket is 4 cents per minute for long distance or unlimited phone calls and texting for $35 a month. The federal prison system costs 23 cents per minute, but here is where it gets outrageous. A call in a Georgia state prison via private company Global Telling costs $1.13 a minute. That's about 17 bucks for a 15-minute phone call. And while it's the families that incur the cost, the phone companies and state prison systems are reaping the profits. Even federal prison systems, which charge much less, still make money off the calls. Now the Federal Communications Commission is taking notice of the exorbitant fees. The FCC announced it would seek public comment on prison phone rates. So why are the rates so high, and can the FCC change anything? I'm joined now by Drew Kukrowski, Research Associate for the Prison Policy Initiative. Drew, welcome. So now it seems that not all prisons are created equal when it comes to charging prisoners for phone calls. Federal prisons cost significantly less than state prisons, as we just saw. Why is that?
Well, the federal prison system operates its own phone system, unlike state systems, which contract with just a handful of phone companies, the largest of which is Global Telling, which controls about 55% of the state prison market in the United States.
And just how lucrative would you say this prison telephone industry is?
Well, just to put it into perspective a little bit, Global Telling was purchased by a private equity firm in New York about a year and a half ago for $1 billion. So it's quite a money-making industry in the United States.
Wow. And Drew, can you explain how states are making money off of this?
Yeah, what happens in these prison phone contracts are the state prison system submits a request for bids from the prison telephone companies, and Global Telling or Securus Technologies, which is the other big company, will submit a contract. And in that contract, there'll be a requirement for what is known as a commission payment. And that's just a fancy word for a kickback. And what it does is it requires the phone company to pay a percentage of all the revenue that they bring in back to the state prison system. And the average kickback across the nation is about 40%.
Wow. So we see that there is an incentive there to be charging the higher rate. So it looks like state prison systems have no incentive to offer the lowest rate at all.
Yeah, it's actually the exact opposite of what you would expect in sort of an ordinary, well-functioning market where the state would select the lowest bidder. Here, the state has the exact opposite incentive, which is to select the company that promises to pay the highest commission, which they then pass off to the consumers, which are the families of incarcerated people for the most part.
Right. And meanwhile, those that are incarcerated, it's either the prisoners or the family that is bearing the burden of the cost. They have no choice but to pay these hefty fees. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And almost all the contracts around the country are exclusive contracts. So it's not like you get to choose between Global Telling or Securus Technologies. You just have to, pay the rate for the company that has the contract for the prison that you're incarcerated in. And, by and large, prisoners in the United States make very little money, 15, 20 cents an hour. And so the families end up footing the bill for most of these calls.
All right, and kind of thinking of the long term or the greater effects of this, how does family contact help prisoners in terms of the recidivism rate and having that contact with family members? Of course, I think it's millions of children do have at least one parent that is in jail. So what are the greater implications of this?
Yeah, as you point out, there's approximately 2.7 million children in the United States who have a parent who's incarcerated. And the overwhelming social science research over the past few decades has concluded that family contact during the period of incarceration lowers recidivism rates. And this has been accepted by Congress. It's been cited by the United States Congress in federal legislation. It's been cited by state legislatures in the handful of states that have reformed their prison phone systems. And it's even been cited by the American Correctional Association which is the professional association that accredits prisons and jails in the United States.
All
So it's
right.
a rather controversial point.
So it doesn't look like it's doing anybody very good to be charging these hefty rates. Drew, what can the FCC do about this?
So the FCC, as the federal regulatory body, only has jurisdiction over interstate long distance rates, which tend to be the highest rates in the United States. And what the FCC is considering right now is proposing a regulation to put a maximum price cap on the amount that the prison telephone companies can charge on those interstate long distance rates.
Okay, kind of want to take a look, Drew, at the other side of this for those that might be advocates of charging these high rates. Those that think that this is just fine would say prisoners have been convicted of a crime and serving time means you get certain rights taken away. And if that means the state makes more money off the prisoners, so be it. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, it's mostly the families of prisoners that foot the bill. So it's actually the people who really haven't done anything wrong at all that end up with these high prices, which, are sort of a regressive tax, actually, if you think about it. So that's one thing that I would say. The other thing I would say is that approximately 60% of the people in jails around the country are unconvicted. So they haven't been to trial, they haven't been convicted of anything yet, and they're still being forced to pay these high rates. So I would respond to people by saying that it's mostly the families of people in prison that pay the rates, and there's even a good portion of people in jails that have not been convicted of anything.
Interesting. Want to ask, I don't know if this is a way to get around it, but what about collect calls? People with family members in prison say they generally receive collect calls. Is that a different system? Is that a way to circumvent these high rates?
No, the high rates apply to both the collect calls and the prepaid calls. Most calls made from prisons and jails are collect, and the rates are the highest for the collect calls. The other way that prisoners pay for calls is through prepaid systems, which they can purchase a phone card through the commissary account at the prison or the jail. Of course, the fact that prisoners don't make any money while they're working, in prison or jail means that most of that money that gets loaded onto their commissary account comes from their friends and loved ones on the outside.
Very interesting. Drew, appreciate you coming on the show and weighing in on this. That was Drew Kokrowski, Research Associate for the Prison Policy Initiative.